Ruchem aboim b'shem Hashem, b'shem Irgin Shir. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Rabbi Yakov Zasmishlita on Hilchos Dvar Manoigim Besa'уда, eating conduct, halachic perspective. That was great. Schus is sponsoring a shir called Irgin Shir Torah at 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Harav Smith.
Rabbi Sam Meltzer once went to visit the Alta in Slobodka, and he brought along his best Talmud. And he wanted to show what the future of Klal Yisrael is. This gadol. So they were talking, and in the middle of talking, the Bach noticed there was some sugar that spilled on the table. So he put it on his finger and he put it into his mouth. And the Alta was very upset. You know, you're sitting in front of Anoshim Chashuvim and you a lack of derech eretz. So he suddenly turned to the Bach. Let me ask you a few questions. What's more chashuv, a live person or a dead person? So the Bach is looking. This is the Alta in Slobodka. What's a live person? What's more chashuv, a live lion or a dead lion? Again, he's looking like, why not? A live dog or a dead dog? And he's wondering why the Alta is driving at. Then he said, let me ask another question. What's more chashuv, a live dog or a dead lion? So the Bacha knew a little bit. They said, oh, that's a pasuk in Keheles. Ki lekelev chayu toiv min aryei hameis. He says, okay, good, wonderful. Now I want to ask you a question. It's a riddle. How is it possible that a dead dog, which is the worst of all it's not worst on the level of chshivas, a dead dog is better than a live person? So the Bach says, this can't be. It's not shaykh, because a person is the most chashuv. A live person, certainly more chashuv than a dead dog. Because you forgot the medrash. The medrash in the beginning of Vayikra Aleph Tezvav, Vayikra El Moshe V'Yadaber Hashem, the Bereshit called Moshe, and then Moshe came. Mikan Amru Kol Talmud Chacham She'ein Boi Das, and Das in this context, the Mefarshim say, is derech eretz. Even a Talmud Chacham, but if he has no derech eretz, Nevela Toiva Himenu. A dead dog is better than Talmud Chacham, but who's the Talmud Chacham? Moshe Rabbeinu. And the Medrash has a few lines of Moshe's godless. The Avi Chachma, Avi Neviim, he took Klal Yisrael out of Mitzrayim, he's with Nahar Sinai, everything and every Nisim. But had he done something that was a lack of derech eretz, nevela toivei menu. And this is one of the many expressions of the Mishnah Navas in derech eretz, kadma l'Torah. Im ein derech eretz, ein Torah. But the sad part of the story is that the Meir Chodesh, one of the big mashgichim in Eretz Yisrael, Talmud of the Alta of Slobodka, says he knew the Bacha, and although the Bacha got this warning, nothing became of him because he didn't work at his midas. Now, a victim of amein derech eretz, ein Torah, like the Ben Yoyin on that Mishnah in Paragimel Yud Zayin explains. First, you have to work on midas, and then comes Torah. She'ena shechenes la'olam beguf she'ena bal midas. Lo yishil metorah v'achkach yikach midas ki yefsha. And Ben Yoyin teaches that's shot in the statement that Klal Yisrael made that really gave us crowns forever. Nasa v'nishma. What is nasa v'nishma? What's the greatness of that? Nasa is midas toivas. Then nishma. Now, I felt that today's sugya needs an akdama, and this is the akdama. You know, we're talking about today a sugya in halacha. It's not a musashmuz. It's a sugya with different mesechtas and shas, rishonim, shulchan aruch. We have to appreciate what we call menschlichkeit is kadma la'Torah. The Medrash in Vayikra Tes Gimel says that the Bereshit created the world, and for 26 generations there had to be a world before Torah. Esem v'shisha doiris kadma derech eretz es ha-Torah. And that's what lishmar as derech eitz chayim. Derech is derech eretz. Only then is eitz chayim Torah. What does that mean? You have to have 26 generations of world before Torah. Maybe it's a message that we have to prepare. The world has to be roy for the Torah. There has to be a iyun otzum, a limud nifla in derech eretz. But it's interesting, when you see that this was done, it seems that Tanoim learned hilchos derech eretz with Talmidim. I'll tell you an amazing story. In derech eretz, Rabbi Perek Zayin, Ois Aleph, There's a very interesting story. Rabbi Kiva, the Heilige Rabbi Kiva, made a party for his Talmidim. And it wasn't a Siyam or Yomtov Suda. They didn't know why, but the Rebbe roofed to the party, they go. Okay. And he put down bread, vegetables, and he put down a piece of a raw food, a food that was cooked partially, a piece of meat, but that was raw. So the Pikeach came along. And what does it mean Pikeach? So before the Ben Yeshua on the Medrash, on the Masechet Derech Eretz teaches, he had Derech Eretz. He tried to cut it, and it didn't go. So he put it down, and he ate bread and vegetables. The Tippish, who didn't have Derech Eretz, he bit into it because it didn't tear. So that's why I made a Suda. I have to teach you Derech Eretz. You don't bite into a food. And it's interesting, the Lashon of Rabbi Kiva, what he told him is, you should use your foot. Now, use your foot. So Zakta ben Yeshua, it's more inappropriate what you're doing than using your foot. Biting into a food publicly. Now, you hear this, and it's amazing. We talk about Rabbi Kiva. The Gemara says, Menachos Chavtes, when the Baruch Shem showed Moshe Rabbeinu the future generations, and he saw Rabbi Kiva, he said, Rabbi Shem, if you have him, why do you need me? His Talmidim were Gedolei Tanoim. You know the list of Talmidim of Rabbi Kiva? And Rabbi Kiva not only taught Hilchos Derech Eretz, but he had a hands-on, I guess pun intended, a hands-on lesson. He made a party, a ganze Spiel, to teach them how to eat with Derech Eretz. The Gemara in Bayad of Chafayim at Bay is one of the many Gemaras that give examples of Hilchos Derech Eretz. But the Gemara's lashon is Lim the Torah Derech Eretz, that you should a certain way to eat. We'll soon see. And Rashi says, Matzinu af betanoyim shemalamdim hilchos derech eretz. A person has to eat properly. So today's sugya, we're going to do what Tanoim did, what Rabbi Kiva did, and we'll learn hilchos derech eretz. Again, a whole simon in Shulchan Aruch simon Kufayin, all the halachos of hilchos derech eretz. I saw in a very chashuv sefer, Heintig sefer in Eretz Yisrael, it's called Oitzes HaMus, it's number 479. He said he made a computer search, how many times you find in Chazal Hilchos Derech Eretz. And he came up with 64 places in Shas. Also he had in Medrash, in other words, what he calls the Medrash Rabbah, he found much more than that also. And then he found he has 52 places in the Medrash, and 27 places in Derech Eretz, Rabbah, and Zuta. So that brings you a sum total of 143 Mekoros in Chazal about Derech Eretz. Being a menschlichkeit. And that's why you can understand why the Yavitz in his Sefer, one of his Svar, Migdal Oiz, Du B'ni, Ki Mailas Derech Eretz, Mida Chashuva Ad Ma'oid, Bavura Yikda Adam Chaylam Haba, and it's Chavivahi, the Baruch Shalom very much cherishes it, and it says that's what it means. Someone that's not min hayishuv, he doesn't act with derech eretz. Actually, he says that there's a chut hameshus lo meher yunateh, because Gemara says in Kedushin, there's mikra and mishnah and min hayishuv. If you want to learn Torah, first, what's a shas digel learned? It has to be with the crown of derech eretz. The Ben Ish Chai in Bahar Tes, he writes, especially if someone's a Ben Torah, an Erlich Chayid, he doesn't have derech eretz, he's mechalal shalom shamayim. And the Emes Sam Soifen, a tshuva, beautiful tshuva, he writes how often, it's Chelik Vav, Simon and Tes, he says how often people have a taina, Lamdin kazeh, Yasa Dava kazeh. So, we wear the crown of Torah, of Laim Dei Torah, of Tamid Chachamim, and it has to be the derech eretz Kadmal HaTorah. And especially we live in a world today that has abandoned any vestige of derech eretz, a world that, do what you want. So we have to be mechazik in this inyan. Let's start from an halacha in Choshe Mishpat, glad it's a Gemara Kedushin, but more than halacha l'maisa, it's a good insight into understanding why derech eretz is so important. Gemara in Kedushin, daf mem amud beis, ha'oichel b'shuk hareiz daimul lekelev. Someone eats in the street, he's daimul lekelev. And it's not just calling him a name. The Gemara says, for that reason, he's pasal le'edus. Someone's eating, and it's glad kosher, it's chol how he brings this halacha l'maisa. Habezuyim, people that are mamish mevuzah, apostle eidis. What's considered a mevuzah in the eyes of Shulchan Aruch? So one example is, pardon me, he walks around undressed, terribly mevuzah. But the first example of mevuzah is the mechaba, if he goes in the street and eats in the street. Now, this halacha l'maisa is not a musa shmuz. If you're sitting by a chasana and they call up someone sitting next to you to be eidis, and you saw yesterday he was eating a sandwich in the street, tell him maybe you shouldn't take the eidis. Or minimally do on a quick tshuva, because he's pasul eidis. They once asked a Victor Miller, a person that only eats a snack in the street. So he goes, oh, maybe he's a puppy dog. Now, I don't know if a puppy dog is kosher eidis or not, but the message is that it's unacceptable. It's a bozi. But what's taka de pshat? So Rashi says a tremendous insight. Rashi says that since he's not makbid al atzmoi, he has no self-dignity, no self-esteem, the ein loy boishes upon him, he has no qualms about lying. You see, the yisoid of atzlach is when a person lives and feels that he's important. He's a ben melech, he's a bonam lamokim, and not metarnished, you're not allowed to, it's a pasvinisht, ich will nicht. It's below my dignity. But when someone eats in the street, daimel lekelev, nothing bothers him. He lost the strongest deterrent of doing a chet. You know, the Mishnah, it's amazing. The Chazal had the right psychology. The Mishnah in Sanhedrin Lamed Zayin is talking about someone that's being made that Pliny killed someone or did a terrible aveira, and Bezin giving him misa. But the question is, maybe the eidus is lying. I mean, there's two eidus, maybe they're lying. So how do you stop someone from doing a terrible, terrible crime that's going to cause someone else to die? So the Mishnah in Lamed Zayin, you know what you do? Tell him, Lefikach kol echad bi echad chayiv loyim b'shvili nivra oila. Tell him what he is, what he's supposed to, what he could be. Zok Rashi, how does that serve as a deterrent? Kloima choshev ani ka'oila mole lo etrid es atzmi na'oilam b'avera achas. The greatest, most successful way to stop a person doing a chet, know how important you are. You're worth the world. The Bereshit created the entire world just for you. Chayiv kol echad v'echad. Remember, I once saw a bacher wearing a t-shirt that was very inappropriate. So I looked at him and he said, "What's wrong? It's not shotness." So I asked him, "Would you put that on the Sefer Torah as a mantle?" So he looked at me. He was too respectful, but he wanted to say, like, shaychus. I'm not a Sefer Torah. So I told him, "See, that's your biggest mistake. You forgot what you are. You forgot a Gemara. You forgot a Mechabat Shulchan Aruch." In Shabbos Kuf Heimed Beis, Mar says, if someone is standing b'shas yitzias neshama of another yid, and Rashi says, even if he's a reik, a simple person, he has to rise kriya. Lamazeh doim is Gemara, the Sefer Torah shen nisrfa, and this is gepaskin in Yeridei Hilchos Kriya shin mem sifei. Even if he's standing by a simple person, but in halacha's eyes, in the Bereshit's eyes, like Sefer Torah shen nisrfa, because every yid has mitzvahs. The Chasam Soif and Chelik Vav Siman Yud has a line, Adam Yisrael Havik Sefer Torah. It's not his chiddush, it's a Gemara. So if we wouldn't do it to a mantle on a Sefer Torah, why should we do it to ourselves? And this is really the yisoid of our sugya. When a person lives with their cheretz for himself, we'll soon see the bulk of their cheretz is not, besides but adna chaveris, but adna atzmai. How we eat, how we fezach, with b'nei malachim. And I want to say, I think this emes lamitoy, if you think about it, probably the biggest insanity, the biggest absurdity since the world was created was the theory of evolution. Now, you think about it objectively. Why should any human being want to think that his Zayda was a monkey? We like to be miyuchosim, Rebbe She'enik. Oh, no, fine. Why should I think that when I go to the zoo on Chalamoid and I see the monkeys, they're my first cousins? Why should I believe that? Why should any human being want to believe he came from monkeys? You know, the answer is very pashut. Because people wanted to act the way they wanted to act, and without restraint, without a guilty feeling. But if you're a human being, you have to act like appropriately. But if sachakal, you're a monkey, so you're better than the monkey in the zoo. And that's why we live in a world today that anything goes. You know, today they have a 6-foot hero sandwich. Rafsin, we define the word Rafsin, and there's a big gulp, a drink 44 ounces in one gulp. Why not? You know, a bas melech has to dress properly. A bas monkey could do what you want. And the Goyish Welt wanted to abandon any guilty feeling or basically restriction. And that's the chachma of Oichel B'Shuk Doim L'Kelev, and that's the chachma of Sefer Torah Shenisra, a person's chashuv. He's a ben melech, kol Yisrael b'nei malachim. So with that in mind, I think we have more of a appreciation of our sugya and the importance of it, because that's really highlighting our sugya. So basically, we'll soon see the first part is bein adam la'atzmoi, and the second part bein mechaveroi. But remember one thing: this is a real sugya with halachos. You know, the Chavetz Chaim and Akdama writes, whatever he wrote in Mishtabura is halacha l'maisa, not from kaiten. So let's start the sugya. The Gemara in Brachos Lamed Testament Beis Rab Zera, when he would cut the challah on Shabbos, he would cut a big piece of challah. Frag the Gemara, v'okem eschazik Rav Sanusa. What do you mean you cut a big piece of challah? The halacha is you're not allowed to cut a big piece of bread because it looks like Rav Sanusa. Now Rav Sanusa is a word that we have to teach. We use it a lot. Is the word glutton. In Yiddish the word is fresa. Pam didn't like that word as a nivel peh, but you know, we got used to that. But anyhow, cutting a big piece of bread is considered a Rav Sanus. Now what's wrong? I didn't eat it yet, but you have asagis, so you have an agenda. A big piece of bread, you know, you're going to pack it in. So frek the Gemara, how could you cut a big piece of challah on Shabbos? It's an issa of derech eretz, Rav Sanusa. Zog the Gemara, adarabah. Since only the whole week he doesn't do it, only on Shabbos, loy meschazik Rav Sanusa. In other words, it's not a Ravsin, it's Einik Shabbos. During the week, we're a Ben Melech, we're Baram Lamakam, it's a pastanisht. Shabbos, it changed from a Ravsin to Ma'aniges Shabbos. And Taka, you'll find this in Kuf Samach Zayin and Sif Aleph, don't cut a big piece of bread, Nirik Rav Sanusa. But on Hilchos Shabbos, Reish Ayin Dalet Tziv Beis, Mitzvah L'Psoya B'Shabbos Prusa Gedoyla. So the Mishnah Berurah, it's not Mechzik Rav Sanusa. So our first halacha, which is not a chumrah, it's the Dvar Hashem Zu halacha, cutting a big piece of bread during the week is Rav Sanusa. The next halacha is based on a Gemara and a Masechta Derech Eretz Rabbah Perek Vav Mishnah Hey. It's also in Be'ech Chafei Beis. But listen to the Chazal's sensitivity. La yoichel shum ubatzel mi roishay ella mi olav. When you eat garlic or onion, don't eat it from the top of it. Eat it from the leaves. Ve'im achal, if you ate it from the top of it, harei ze rafsan v'gargaran. See, now he's getting a double smicha. Like yod. Not just he's a rafsan, a fresa. Gargarin, the type of gargarin, like the notion of the throat, he swallows a lot. He eats a lot. He eats big pieces quickly. So now, this is even worse. He's a rafsan and a gargarin. Ma pishay, what's wrong with eating it for the top of the onion and the garlic? So the prisha in our simon, today our simon is simon kufayin. Siv Katan Ches Mishnah and Siv Katan Chav Gimel quotes it. Because the olin are the leaves. Now today we don't eat like this. That's well, since it's not negeya, but it's the leaves of the onion or the garlic. It's not as tasty, but the roisha is tasty. Zakti prisha, when a person eats properly, lav dafka taste. He wants to do what's healthy. That's meshubach. But if he goes for the taste right away, that's a gargarin. In other words, he's eating an onion. God is not eating a fancy piece of steak or a Boston cream pie. A vegetable. But if his focus is on maximizing in taste, that Chazal said is a rafsan and a gargarin. The person has to be in control. We don't live to eat, we eat to live. And this is quoted in halacha and Shulchan Aruch Sif Tes. The Kaf HaChaim Sif Katan Lamed Vav writes, today we don't have this top of it, and we don't have the growth of it, the leaves of it, but the concept is extremely relevant. Midina Gemara and Shulchan Aruch, a rafsin is someone that's focusing on eating and eating to maximum. Someone told me they're selling now in the stores something called the fress. I'm afraid to ask what it is, But it seems like it's a sandwich that, the Haliteni No is the brand name. But it's a pliya. Chazal sensitivity. But the Kiddush is the Magen Avram Sif Katan Yudalit, quoting the Aguda, one of the Rishonim. Shabbos, you're allowed to eat the shum and the batzel from the top of it. Why? Ayin Simon Reish Ayin Dalit Seed Beis. Oh, I understand that. Because Shabbos, Hilchas Ravson, is suspended. You're allowed to cut a big piece. Well, soon as you even bite into a big piece, so you're allowed to have the vegetable from the top. But the point is, the attitude, unfortunately we live in a world that's focused very much on, eating real and better food, and it's just coming to a point that we're glorifying food. And that's near Karafsa, Chazal tell us. The next halacha is Derech Eretz Rabbah, and it's in two places in Shas, Be'eh Chafei Amid Beis, and Psach and Peivav Amid Beis. Lo yishta adam koisai bevas achas, v'im asakein harei a ravsan begargren. Again, a double condemnation. Don't drink a kais in one shot. What do? You drink, put it down, and drink again. Now, for the goyim, you gulp down a bottle of beer, that's fine. But for b'nei malachim, we don't do that. The Shulchan Aruch quotes this in Siv Ches, but the question is, any cup you can't drink in one shot? So the Ramah says, kais katan ma'oid mutlish doisi bevas achas. What is kais katan? Zok the Magen Avram, less than a revius. Once the kais has a revius, he quotes the Shlah, drink it in 2 shots, 2 gulps. Smaller than a revius is fine. So it's again a Torah shleima how Banam and Malkim have to act. But what to me was inspiring, Magen Avram adds very, very short, very briefly, if you don't drink, if you have a kais more than a revius, we leave up a little bit on the bottom, but if you drink it in 2 times, that's derech eretz. In other words, what he's saying, to put it simply, is if you drink most of the cup and leave a little bit over, nish geferlich. But you're a yid, and it's better to be perfect than nish geferlich. If you drink it in 2 shots, you're bal derech eretz. You're a covered lamokim. If you do it nish geferlich, so you're nish geferlich. But a yid should be better than that. We weren't born in this world to be yotzah. We do things right. So again, a Torah shleima how to drink a kais. But what's important to mention again, it's Yiddishkeit. The chinuch in Mitzvah Tez Zayin, but he writes it a few places in that area where it speaks about Hilchas Korban Pesach. A bunch of halachos. You can't break a bone, and mavushal, and don't leave over. So the chinuch has a theme that he keeps on referring to, that we now became B'nai Malachim, we became now Anshe Ma'ila, we got the Torah. And it's unbecoming of a prominent person to bite into the bones. When you're in Eved and Mitzrayim, it's okay, but not now. And he says, some of the halachas of Hilchas Korban Pesach is, we have to look at ourselves as Besser mention. And he says, when a person lives that way, Nikva b'nafshiseinu hadavar la'olam. When we feel like we're B'nai Torah, B'nai Aliyah, Banam la'mokim, we act that way. And by breaking a bone to get every last bit of it is the opposite of what the Bernstein wants of us. And that's where you see this halacha. Now someone asked me, he said he was clear, he saw Tamachacha made kiddush and drank the whole kais. Gargan and Rafsaran. So I told him you forgot a Gemara, come on. Actually not a Gemara, but the Tosfos Shabbos in Reish Ayin Daled, Sif Katan Daled, he says a kais of kiddush you'll have to finish entirely, and his source is the Gemara in Brachos. The source is the Aguda. The Aguda says you're allowed to eat the batzel from the top. So we have 2 makairis, and now we have a 3rd makar that Hilchis Ravson does not apply on Shabbos. We saw cutting a big piece, biting into the top of the onion, and now the 3rd halacha is drinking the whole kais, even a big kais, bevasachas is mut. The Tzais HaShulchan in Lamed Zayin Yud Gimel, he says, Nira, it's lav dafka Shabbos, but who adin kais mitzvah, you're allowed to bite into a big piece, and of course drink the whole kais. His hezbah is, it's chibav ha-mitzvah. It's not Ravson. The Magen Avram Grad and Kuf Tzadik Sif Katan Beis also says that similar to that gemiyos, gasois, mishum chibav mitzvah is okay. Now someone asked about schnapps, drinking schnapps, is that a Ravson? I said, well, more than a revius certainly. But he said a little schnapps cup. So I told him, essentially had the same ha'ora. The Sharatzian in Sif Cotton Chaf says, Yayin Sarv Shalanu Shucharv Ma'oid, Mistavra, even a kais smaller than Revias don't drink. He doesn't say how much, but the Kaf HaChaim said the exact same thing, Sif Cotton Lamedalid. So we could say maybe a 1 ounce shot cup, the derech, people drink it in one shot, maybe it's not a Rafsam, but something in between, even less than Revias, Mr. Bura and Kaf HaChaim hold, is a problem. The Tzois HaShulchan Lametes Yud Beis, he seems to say no. Schnapps is no different. Anything less than Revius is okay. And the good news is, for those that make kiddush on schnapps in a small schnapps glasel, that you're zich allowed to drink. Because a kais kiddush is mutter, there's no difference night or day. What I was to spoil how this hilchas derech eretz impact halacha and us on a daily basis. There's halacha in Reish Yud that you make a bracha achrayim and you have to have a kazashir in the right time span, kidei achilas pras. When it comes to drink, kidei shtiyas revius. What is the shtiyas revius of a cup of soda, a cup of water? So the Sharatzian and Reish Yud Sif Kon Inal says, really, it should be to drink in one time. But since the halacha is you're not allowed to drink in one time, you have to have 2 gulps. So therefore, Chazal said the shtiyas revius is drinking, pausing, and starting again. So basically, Hilchais Bracha Achrayna is regulated by Hilchais Derech Eretz. Derech Eretz Kadma LaTorah. Now, when I saw Chiddush, the Shulchan HaTorah, the Kamarna, in our Simon, Sif Yud Aleph, he says you shouldn't drink a full kais at one time, but drinking water, or water with a little bit wine, since you're drinking it litzmoi, because you're thirsty, you're allowed to drink the whole thing in one shot. Now, I didn't understand it at first, but I guess he means to say, if you're drinking wine or something chashiv, and you drink it quickly, that's rafsa. If you're drinking water, or maybe soda, he says, because water with wine added, to quench your thirst, it's not near karafsa. Now, why not? Maybe, pshat is pashut, it's a need, you have to quench your thirst. Then I was thinking maybe a little more oimik to it. The Gemara says in Sukkah Memtes, when you drink something legimois, it's satisfying. Maybe if you drink water slowly to quench your thirst, it won't work. Push it. But I'm not sure. But this is what he says, and he do is a very big machmir. So if he's mekel, so to drink a revius of water in one shot, we zicha saw the Shulchan HaTorah is mekel. The next halach is fascinating because again it's a sugya shleima. Erev nun gimel amid beis. When you learn Gemara, you might wonder, but now you will learn the right shot. Ein mishayrin peya beilfis. You don't leave over a little peya in the pot. Al mishayrin peya bekaora. You leave over peya in the plate. Now, what does it talk about? Peya on the plate. So Rashi learns it's not peya literally, but close to that. When you're given a portion to eat, don't forget the shamish. In those days, it was a waiter was serving and was hungry. And when a person sees food and can't eat, it's not healthy. You have to think about the waiter. So leave a little portion of your plate over for the waiter, like peya, like tzedakah, like tax, and give it to him. That's what Rashi learns the Gemara. Tosfos learns no. It's talking about leaving over food, because if you finish to the last morsel of food, nira karafsan. We have two pshatim and a beferish Gemara. What's the nafkamina? Pashit. Today that there's no waiter, or the waiter is well fed, there's no reason, according to Rashi, leave over a little bit of the food. Like Tosfos, you have to leave over altrafsan. How do we paskin? It's the gate to all of us. So the Torah in our Simon in Kuf Ayin Ois Gimel says only quotes Rashi's pshat. He totally ignores Tosfos pshat near karafsan. The Beis Yosef also quotes Rashi and not Tosfos. The Bach says, what about the other pshat? What about Tosfos? And he says, Lamaisa, we should be choishish for Tosfos pshat as well. So although he says it's a suffix, really, so you look inside, it's a svek what pshat is, but we have to be choishish. I guess hilchas derech eretz, even a svek is a problem. Now, the Ramon Darkei Moshe, Sif Cotton Gimel, and the Oli Rabbah, and the Aruch involved, all quote Rashi. But, I must tell you, the Mechaba, or the Ramah in Shulchan Aruch don't mention Rashi. The Mishnah makes no mention, Tosfos, and the Mishnah makes no mention of Shitas Tosfos. So this is something that I would say, we can't say it's halacha l'maisa mamish, because Mechaber, Ramah, Mishnah do not mention it. But I will add, the Peleyoyitz wrote a sefer on Archayim, in Chesed Lalafim, Kufay and Dalit. He says that a person has to eat with their eretz, and that includes leaving over a little bit food. The Ben Ish Chai in Bahar, Oyis Yudalit, also says, Lav Archarim. So we could definitely say it's a maila to leave over food. The question is, does this apply on every food that we eat, or just one food? So the Piskei Teshuvos in Tafai in Ha'ara 23, he says that pashtus, it would really be only in one food. I also wondered if on Shabbos this halacha leaving over applies. So he quotes the sefer I don't have that basically says it doesn't. Just like we have a big piece and we bite into a big piece, we'll soon see, and drink a revius. So leaving over is definitely a maila. I can't say it's a chiyuv. But it's kedai to mention, we all know this, the Rabbeinu Yoina in Yesod HaTshuva, towards the end, quotes from the Ravid, when a person is enjoying a meal, and he puts it, and everything's very good, and he puts it a little bit over to self-control, that, he says, the Ravid says, is like a tinus that impacts his day more than a tinus, because he could do it more than one time a day. And that's what the place can refer to as tinus aravid, and the Magid Mesharim, the Beis Yosef, we know, learned with a malach, and he recorded everything he learned. So in the beginning, there's Hazhara, he says, page 2, Amud 2, Ois Tezvav, the malach told him, when you're eating, leave a little bit over. It's a wonderful skula. The Shla Kaddish, the Rabbi in Sifkat and Chav Gimel quotes the Shla, Hine Milamedcha, Tshuva Ma'ula, he says, V'hu Chamura Ma'oid V'kala. Easy and very, very chashiv. And that's Dr. Shla, when you're eating something, leave a little bit over, and that's Tainus Harayv. Now, Chatzkel Levenstein said, it's lav dafka leaving it over. If the person has a small portion, he's hungry, so the main thing is control. So it's going good, stop, and say, Rebbe Shtam, I'm controlling myself, I'm out of control. And with that, you yoitza, the tainus arrived. So Rabbi Chatzkel knew what he's talking about, that's also good enough. I should mention, the Mechas Alaza in the Sefer Divrei Torah and Chelik Beis, Ois Beis, declares if this extra mile of tainus arrived, if it applies on Shabbos also. And he has two tzadim, because could be taka, Shabbos, there's no restraint. But then again, tainus arrived, maybe it's a different concept. So that's something you could look up to see the two tzadim. The next halacha is based on a Gemara L'chayra. Gittin daf ayin, shloisha dvar, matiz and gufay shalada, makes a person weak. 2 of the 3 are either eating or drinking while standing. Now the question is, today many people do stand, and we don't see anybody getting sick from it. So the Rav Pa'olam Mechelik Beis, Simon Memhei, he says the fact the Rambam did not quote this in Ilchas Deis is a raya, it's nishtano ativim. Today is different. Okay. But there's a different concern in eating or drinking standing. And coming back to our derech eretz, this is derech eretz zut perikei. The lash is mishu tamad chachem la yoichal me'omid. Don't eat standing. V'lo yalak leik betz ba'oisav. Don't lick your fingers after eating. Or clean the plate with your hands. Zokte nachlas Yakov. Why? That's derech Rav's son. It seems the fact that he put the two together, that eating standing is a form of Rav's son. But if you notice, he says Talmud Chacham. But the Rekeach, one of the Rishonim in Simon Shin Chav Tes, he has a whole shtickle that he calls Derech Eretz Besa'уда. His first entry is Lo Yoichal Adam Me'omid V'Lo Yishta Me'omid, and then V'Lo Yikaneach HaKa'ora. So his first example of Rav's son, and he doesn't mention Talmud Chacham. Every person should not eat or drink standing. Now, so we see it's negated to all of us. And Taka we find, not by us, but in Magen Avraham Reish, Sadik Vav Sif Cotton Dalid, he's talking about those that make Havdalah standing. Because fine, but before you drink the kais, sit down, because La Yishta, until you sit down, he quotes Amati Moshe, Hagois Minhagim, that's the one of the Kadmainim, and Gemara. Which Gemara is he referring to? So we know he's referring to derech that we mentioned, the derech eretz zuta, that you shouldn't sit, you shouldn't eat or drink standing. Now, the only tzad that you could be makel in this is lemaisa, when someone has just te'ima ba'alma. For example, you go to a chasana, and the Masada Kedushin, either he himself drinks or he gives the chassan and kahal to drink. You don't find they sit down. Someone makes a bracha by a bris and drinks the wine, doesn't sit down. So the pais can make a chilek. Drinking has to be sitting. Te'ima ba'alma is okay. So some people are mocked, but anyhow, but you never. If you see someone sitting down by the chuppah, the chassan kahal, they're not min hayishiv. That's not done, so don't be the first to do it. But lemaisa, someone asked me, what about drinking from a water fountain? I said, it's people that will not do it for that reason. Because you're supposed to eat or drink when you're sitting. Now, I had a kasha, and I don't know teretz. The Magen Avram speaks about Havdalah. Some say, if you stand by kiddush, sit down. By mitzvah, there's no problem of Ravson. So I was thinking, but here you have an eight to sit down. But if you hold it, it's not a Ravson, why you have to sit down? I'm not sure. I didn't find anybody that points this out. But they speak about Kiddush and Havdalah, and they're concerned about Ravson. So my question is, you're allowed to drink a whole kais in one shot. So why do you have to sit down? So maybe there's a little bit chashash of sakana. It doesn't seem right. So you have the teretz. I'd love to hear it. Another question on a daily basis, and this is, I found a little more intimidating. And that is the question that comes in different forms. Biting into a food, whether it's a sandwich, pizza, falafel, apple, when it's more than a kebeya. Now, what's the problem? So let's learn the sugya together. In Derech Eretz Rabbah, Perik Vav, Ois Hei, Lo yechois Adam kebeya prusa biyadav. Don't hold a big piece in your hand. Vim osakein harei a ravsan v'gargaran. So again, that double accusation. A ravsan and a gargaran. Now, if you touch the words Lo yechois Adam kebeya, it means don't hold a big piece of food in your hand. What's wrong? So I know it's wrong. We learned today, Gemara and Brachos, cutting a big piece is wrong. So if cutting a big piece is Ravson, holding also. Oh. And the truth is, I found some of the paiskim that hold that halacha. Don't hold the sandwich in your hand. Just that alone is already Ravson. But I could say most paiskim don't know that. Beginning with the Torah in our siman in Kufayin, Lo yoichel adam prusa kebeya. Don't bite into a piece bigger than a kebeya. V'im achal harei ravsan. Zok the Beis Yosef. Although the lashon of the derech eretz is lo yechois, the Torah understood it to mean lo yoichal. And I found close to a million of gedolei achronim that learn like this. The Bach, the Taz, the Drisha, Magen Avram, we'll see the Mishnah Berurah, Machzah Shekel, Levush, Aruch HaShulchan, all understood that although it's a lo yechois, holding a big piece is okay. But holding it and biting into it, that's near karavsan and gargan all in one. Why? Because it's inappropriate. You're biting into a big piece. Oh, so what do I do if I have a sandwich? So we do what we did, what I was mechanech do. You cut it in half, cut it in quarters. You have an apple, cut it into pieces. But to bite into a big piece, holding it's okay, but biting into a big piece is a problem. And this is what the Shulchan Aruch la yoichel adam prusa kebeya im ochel harei gargra. Interesting, of all the achronim that I mentioned, Mishnah Berurah uses a mild lashon. I don't know why. Biting into a piece bigger than a kebeya ain't kedai. He's the first one that used that. I'm not sure why, but all the achronim learned that the pashat pshat in the machaba is pashat pshat in the derech eretz, not to bite into a big piece. So that's why when a person has a sandwich or roll, you cut it in half. Pizza. So pizza again became a new food, even though it wasn't that way. So someone said he saw Einav, Rabbi Feinstein. He used to eat in a restaurant near the yeshiva. The reason is he felt he can't eat the yeshiva food because maybe he's not right, whatever. But he would eat in the restaurant near the yeshiva every day, and he would eat pizza when they served it to him with a knife and fork. Takes away some of the gishmak of it, the halitaining of it. Rabbi Chaim Epstein constantly told his talmidim, pizza, knife and fork. But he said the lumdus is, why do they make it shaped like a triangle? Because you want to get into it, get close and close until it's a big piece and you open wide. That's part of the halitani, you know. But anyhow, this is what I heard and what I've seen when I was growing up. Today we see many people bite into sandwiches and bite into pizza. So I looked into this, Now, to my knowledge, the first that I found, Biksav, is one of the Paiskim of our door. Takana, the Godlam Oy, the Orlatzir, Matzian Abba Shaul, in Simon Memvav, Siv, Cotton Zion. He says, although you can't bite into a big piece, but if it's the derech, then you're allowed to. Lamashal, sandwich, he spells it out, Samach Nun Dal Vav Tzadik, pita, and at the bottom he explains, if that's the derech to eat a sandwich or a pita, loy nira kirafsan. Then I saw the V'zois HaBracha, that's one of the Heintige Boys from Amud 15. Harbe Paiskis Mainenu, doesn't mention any of them, hold that today, sandwich, pita, and includes pizza, is the derech, and it's mutter to eat as it is. Now, Lamaisa, what they understood is that derech eretz is subjective. And maybe they understood derech eretz means the way of the land. No, the way of the land today is definitely to eat a kabeya. I mean, that's the mild problems, that's, the fresh. But that's the derech eretz. Now, of course, the big makam l'chalek is that if it's something objectively wrong, that we don't follow derech olam. I mean, we don't change hilchas niyas because the world around us abandoned hilchas niyas, and no one will say it's mutter to eat b'shuk, and today is no longer done with the calc, everybody else does it. So why all of a sudden it comes to biting into a big piece, are you makel? So, Taka Isur, B'soyanka Fisher, quoting the same V'zois HaBracha, he says nothing changes. If it's objectively wrong, nothing will change. So it seems, I don't know if it's a machlokes, but the difference of opinions would be, is this as serious as oichel b'shuk daimul kelev, or maybe it's a notch lower? I don't know. I could just tell you the way I was mechunach. You cut the sandwich in half. You cut the pizza in half. Using a knife and fork is an alternative. But those that do bite into a sandwich, as we see, the quotes harbe poiskis manenu, that the derech today, and that would be acceptable. Now, I would make a point or two, and that is, people say you can't bite into a piece bigger than a kazayas. Now that's wrong. The lashon of the derech eretz and Shulchan Aruch is a kebeya. Number two, what is the size of a beya today? So a beya today, some say niskatnu abeya. So you have to double the share. So we'll use niskatnu ashir in our context lakula. So even though gabi bracha achreina on a half a slice of bread you could wash and bench because it's a kebeya, we'll say no, today it's got no abeya. Oh, so we'll be generous. But a slice of bread is already a kebeya l'chol hashitas. Now, Lamaisa, that same Seif V'zois Bracha makes another point, and he says, why did the Masechet Derech Eretz Shulchan Aruch say that more than a kebeya is a rafsan? Because no one eats a piece that big. But today, every form of food that we get, every form of bread, is bigger than a kebeya. A roll, a bagel, a sesame roll, even the center slice of bread is already kebeya. So you want to say, maybe the whole share of kebeya, we could expand it a little more. Okay, in America it's a free country, you can say what you want, but this got to make sense. But what we should say is that if you take a sandwich and cut it in half, so like the smallest share of kebeya, you still have a problem, because you have right now a size of a slice of bread. But if you cut it in half, so you're doing something, we could put those two kulas together. Now, Lamaisa, to me was a chiddush, the Piskei Tshuvos in Sif Yud Aleph, on our halacha and Shulchan Aruch, he says, today the derech is to eat bigger pieces, so you could hold a sandwich and bite into it, and pita. And then he adds, V'yesh hasoivim sheroyu lahachma. So I looked in the bottom, who's the heta or letzian? Who's yesh lahachmer? V'shayanka fisher. So I don't know where he got this from, that the halacha l'maisa is mutter. But a chumrah would be to be machmer. Maybe fakert, maybe it's equal. So I could only say what I saw, and I'll tell you what I saw. I just think that the fact that 90% of the fact that the world does it, to me, is not a raya. Because again, it's a batishach ha'aretz, so derech eretz, tishach ha'aretz doesn't really work. But even of the world, of the Yiddish world, people that do it, I would venture 90% never heard this halacha, never went through the sugya, and never came out with a heta because it's their lack of derech eretz. So maybe we should look at it objectively. But I will say, if a bacha comes home and he wants to start cutting the pizza, and Moses, what are you doing, getting me nervous? No. So let's keep it up. You could be saimach on the makilim. But definitely, hamachma tavil bracha, and amekel yashami lismach. The next question, which negaya approximately 65 days a year, on Shabbos or Yomtov, can you bite into a big piece more than a kibeya? This is the Masechet Derech Eretz. So the truth is, although we learned the Gemara in Berachos Lambetes, you're allowed to cut a big piece, it doesn't say you're allowed to bite into a big piece. Maybe if I care, it's only cutting, not biting. But the Aruch HaShulchan in Sifir Aleph assumes don't bite into a big piece except on Shabbos. And I saw quoted Abar Labelza, Mamash Malach Alikim, Kamat didn't eat during the week, but Shabbos he would bite in with great zrizus into a piece bigger than a kebeya, out covered Shabbos. So basically it seems that uncovered Shabbos would override the problem of even biting into a piece bigger than a kebeya. Some attack a machmer, even on Shabbos, you cut a big piece and they break off from that. But for those that that want to follow the Pashut Halacha, when you have a piece of bread, a roll, so holding on to it is mutter, but even that's a kula. You know, people like to hear a kula, that's a kula. Because some people say holding the bread is a problem. But you hold it and you break off a piece, you tear off a piece and you eat one piece at a time. The next halacha, which is a big part of the Hilchos Derech Eretz, is when it affects ben adam l'chaverei. And the best hagdama is a Gemara. Besides being halacha, it's also a good hagdama to the sugya. The Gemara says in the Chagiga Daf Hey, Rabbi Yochanan, when he came to the pasuk that we just learned in Keheles not long ago, Ki es kol ma'isa Elokim yavai b'mishpat al kol nelam. The Bernstein will hold us accountable even for a shaygig. So Rabbi Yochanan started crying. We get punished for a shaygig? It doesn't seem fair. So when you learn the Gemara, you're bothered. So what's Taka the Pshat? The Bernstein is not fair, Chas v'sholem. So what are the examples of the mishpat al kol nelam? So Gemara has two examples. Someone that swats kills a bug in front of his friend, and the blood starts oozing out of the bug. So it's not nice. Or someone spits in front of his friend, and chaverei nimis, Rashi says nimis ktsas. Now, avada, a yid doesn't spit, b'chal, but if you spit in front of your friend, it's inappropriate. So the question is, nimis ktsas, and he didn't think about what's wrong. So I'll tell you, I learned this from Ma'aseh Shehaya. I was once speaking by a convention, and right before I was about to start speaking, an Adam Choshemoid sat down right in front of me, and seeing someone that was sitting before him use a number of tissues, it must have been during the winter, had a cold, and left all his, I don't know the word dirty tissues, it's not Lashon Nakiya, I'll say he left his pre-owned tissues, okay, on the table. And this Adam Choshe sat down and his welcoming committee was someone else's pre-owned used tissues. And he made such a face like I'll never forget. And I made a Kabbalah, I'm going to talk about it whenever I have a chance. Because this is Pshat in the Gemara. You know, you say the person left tissues, he was maybe an Erlich Yid, a Ben Torah, maybe he was a wonderful person. But what was he thinking? He leaves dirty tissues, and then someone else is going to come. You know what the teretz is? He wasn't thinking. So in a certain sense, it's an Ela. It's a shaykik. He didn't mean bad. He's not malicious intent. But that's the avla. Well, how could you not think? Ben Adam Chaverei. And this is be'emes with Aruch HaShulchan and Sif Yud Beis, when he gives examples of things that are inappropriate, lacking derech eretz, and he gives examples and he spells them out. Of course, his first example is don't spit in front of someone else. Don't blow your nose violently in front of someone else. You have to do it. Move to the side. Don't clean your mouth, your teeth. People, they stick their finger into the mouth. They start cleaning. They take their finger out. It's shining from saliva. I mean, totally inappropriate. But betracht nicht. Then he says, grepsen, pardon me, making burps. Someone said, yeah, but in China, it's a compliment. I said, good, go to China and compliment by grepsing. But not here. That's mamash a lack of derech eretz. But his point is, things that are simple, but we don't think. But the chiddush to me, I mean, is the yayvis. The yayvis in the Siddur, you should know, if you have the new print, there's 2 volumes, Chelik Aleph, Taf Lamed Aleph, you know, Utchi Nafshechem. There's a whole shtickle on Hilchos Derech Eretz. He says, I can't give every example, but Kol Yishal Dava, just like you are in a Beis HaKnesses, you think and you act appropriately, Ki Gadol Kvayd Abriyas, Ki U'asli B'Tzelem Alekim. Da lifnei miyata oimid in shul, da lifnei miyata oimid b'nad mechaverei. I'll give you another example. People eat very loudly. You know, it's like they sound like a compactor. Inappropriate. A person has to eat with an edelkeit. I'll give you another example. There's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch, in our Simon Sif Yud, based on a derech eretz, la yishech prusa v'yanichenu agabi hashulchan. It sounds like don't bite into a food, even less than a shear, a small piece, and put it down. What's wrong? You know what's wrong? Your teeth marks are on the food. Not nice. So the kasha is 5 seifim later in Sif Tezvav, the Mechabes la yishach prusa v'yetnena lifnei chaverei otecha ka'ora v'she'ein das kalabriya shava. Don't give it to your friend. Is mashma putting down is okay. So the Mishnah quotes Achrayim and says the chiluk is as if you bite into something and spit it out, it wasn't good. Don't put it down on the table at all. Which some people don't realize. They find something in the mouth, they spit it out and they put it down. What are you thinking? That don't put it at all. But when you bite into something, you put it on your side of your plate, but don't put it in front of someone else. So look at a ganze Torah Shlema how to bite into a food. And the Marsha in Brachas Avches Amud Bey says some people don't bite into food at all. They tear off a piece at a time. So again, when you find something in your mouth and maybe something that wasn't good, you spit out, you turn to the side, you get a tissue. But with an edelkeit. Also, this is also based on derech eretz. This is the Perik Tes, the Shulchan Aruch in Sif Tezayin quotes this. La yishta mikais v'yit lechaverei when they sakonis nefashis. Don't make kiddush, drink the kais, and give it to a guest to drink from. Sakonis nefashis? Dr. Mishnah, yeah. Because really he's very much of a mafonik. He's very particular. But he can't drink from someone else's mouth. But you give it to him, what should he do? Say, I don't want it. And he gets so nimbus, he might get sick. I mean, look at the zahiras that they had. So a lot was written about the kaishal bracha. So with one's own family, it's okay. But with guests, Dr. Shlomo Zalman in Shmir Shabbos, Memches Ha'ora Samachtes, we shouldn't do that. You have a guest, pour off from the kaishal bracha first before you drink, and then drink. Okay, it's children-in-law, depending on the relationship, but basically, one owns children is okay. With guests, pour off, and then drink from the kais. The next halacha is, I should mention also, in Chiv Chav Beis, the Shulchan Aruch again comes back to this, and the Mishnah Berurah by us points out, he quotes from a much earlier source, Tzavos Abelazar Hagadol, Mazeh Ma'oid, don't drink from someone else's mouth because of germs. So hopefully germs today, maybe, we're not so concerned, it's not COVID the season, but basically the derech eretz of B'nai Chaverei has to be very much our focus. The next halach is fascinating because it's in a certain sense the neshama of Hilchos derech eretz. And that's the very mysterious halacha, Kol ma shem b'bal bayis aseh, chutz mitzeh. So right away you wonder, chutz mitzeh sounds like a joke. Fakert, if it tells you to go, go. So if you look at the Bakar in Masechet Derech Eretz Vav, in the beginning of Perik Vav, hanichas the bayis, kol ma sheyigzol balabayis yaseh. Now it's funny, he must be a strange fellow. He's goiza, you should do something. It sounds a little funny to me. But anyhow, there's no mention of chutz mitzeh. Where do we find that lashon? That's Psachim Pei Vav Amud Beis, kol ma shem balabayis aseh. That's more the lashon that we quote. And then in parentheses, chutz mitzeh. So now the mystery is thickening. Like, what's going on here? It doesn't say that Masechet Derech Eretz. Here it says in parentheses. And what's takap pshat? And how could it be? Fakert, if he tells you to go, you go. So the most mefurish pshat that we find is toisis in that Gemara in Psachim. And that is something that a person feels he doesn't like to do because it's gaiva, it's merzik yuara. Divrei gasus u'shurara, he wouldn't do in his own house. But if the Balabas tells you to do that, you do it. What about Anova? Teretz is Derech Eretz Kadmon LaTorah. Now the time is to listen to the Balabas. That's what it means, I say. And look at the story in the Gemara. That's the context. In other words, you have a hiddur, very nice, at your own home, but not when someone else asks you to do that. This is basically the introduction to our sugya. Now, the Shulchan Aruch quotes this as well in our Siman Sif Hey. Mishnah Berurah brings this mashal. The next example, Mishnah Berurah quotes also from an earlier source. If the oireach has a certain chumrah, he doesn't eat a certain food, and now he's being served that food. So it depends. If it's a real safek issa, like they're not clean, they don't clean the vegetables properly, so you don't have to eat it. But if it's something just a hiddur, eat it. I have a hiddur. Now the hiddur is in Beram Chaveri, in Derech Eretz. So Lamaisa, how do you get out of it? So let's say you don't want to eat it, and taka is a problem with the kashrus. So you have to use a little bit seichel, and try to do it tactfully. I'm on a diet. Some people say my doctor doesn't let. Who's my doctor? The Rambam, or maybe the Rebbeinu, Ani Hashem Reifecha. You're Gnei Vazdas, but the Dak Hashem you're allowed to lie. So in fact, some say in the Gemara in Bav Metzia, more specifically Chav Gimel Amabeis, one of the things you're allowed to lie in is Ushpiza, and maybe this is included. But if it's taka chashash issa, then you're allowed to get out of it. But if it's just a hiddur, now is the time mahadr in Berat Mechaverei. And it's more pashit if they serve you food and you don't like the food, so eat it. Nothing's going to happen. If it's just a question of taste, they say a number of gedolim. I heard this b'shem from the Enikol and Netziv, that the food he didn't like for 40 years, and he ate it because his wife served it al skala. He goes, you like it? He goes, yes, delicious. Okay, wonderful. Every day he got that food. So that's basically Mash Balbayis, I'd say. I don't know who the Balbayis in home is, but that's a good example. But if you want to hear what the Gemara really means, you look in the Hagdama, in Shulchan Aruch, in Chelik Aleph, the Goyin's children wrote an Hagdama. Now this is not a Maisa that, it's true, but didn't happen. This is what the Goyin's children wrote. The Goyin was once traveling, and he stayed by an Ish Yosh's home, and this person fed him, gave him to eat. And the Goyin had a very weak stomach, couldn't eat the food, but he said, eat. So he ate and threw up. Of course, he stepped out and threw up. It happened 3 or 4 times, until the Talmud told this Goyin, what are you doing? You don't agree to the food. So he goes, whenever the Gemara says asay, it means ad kedei mesiras nefesh. And he was moist nefesh to eat and throw up until the Talmud told about, the Baal Bas, ad kan. But lamaisa, eating a food you don't like, no, you'll manage. That's zicha not included in your Harag Vayavor. But basically, that's derech eretz. Obviously, not mention complimenting the Balas Habayis. That's derech eretz. I once had a guest at Bachel Yeshiva. So about the bench, he goes, this food was so delicious, I should bench twice. So it was a sneistic way of complimenting, the Balas Habayis. Nothing wrong if you compliment the Balas Habayis directly. But basically, it's seichel. Another point I should mention, Hilchas Balas Habayis. And some people insist, eat. The person can't eat. And then he's in a quandary. The Mishnah quotes the big dayesh, if eating too much, you're not mechuyev to. So the Balas Habayis has to have seichel. He could say, in my house, it's like a chashverosh. Kutsoyin ish ve'ish. Whatever you want. You want to say about Torah? Putting people on the spot is sometimes not right for the other person. But what's pshat chutz mitzay? So the Meiri on that Gemara writes, this is what I quote, let's put it into the Gemara. It's Latzanis. Other Habam. You have to go. But it's unbelievable how we have Torah Shalema. The Binyan Yeshua on this Masechet Decher, it says, when the Baal Bas tells you to do an Issa, that's Tzei. Going out of the restrictions of halacha. That's Tzei. That's one pshat. The Goyen has a pshat. The Baal Bas tells you have to listen. The one thing, do before he tells you, and that is leave. Don't overstay. Leave before he tells you, like, it's getting late. The Marsha, on that Gemara, is an incredible pshat. Very lumps of pshat. If he tells you to go, he's ois Baal Bas. So there's no halacha of Kol Mash Ba'avas Hatzei. He lost Chalois Baal Bas. That's the Marsha on that Gemara. The Bach says a pshat, if he tells you to go to shopping for me, so that already is tzei. Because you're not mechuyev to go on the street, it's a lack of tznius. The Birkei Yosef learns a pshat, the Gemara is emphasizing. It's so much of a chiyuv to be a mensch, to be a Baal Derech Eretz, except for tzei. What tzei means on a geya. But everything else you must listen to. You don't like the food, and whatever's taking too long, whatever it is, but go along and don't make a fuss. But to me, what I found really gishmak, someone asked me before Rosh Hashanah, he called my house. He's going to Eretz Yisrael, he does every year Rosh Hashanah, and he always stays in one person's house. But this year, it's more convenient in someone else's house. Could he change his host? I says, you machaven to a pasuk that got a lane point this past week. Ram quotes it in Tivkot and Yod now with Simon. Don't change the achsanya shaloi. Zog the Gemara ad heichan lo yeshana. To what extent? So Rav says until he hits you to go elsewhere. What's the pshat? So one of the pshatim is, if he tells you to go out, it's a bad reflection on him or you, one of the two or both of you. So that you're not mechuyev to do. So zokt the Mate Moshe in Siman Reish Sadik, that's pshat in the Gemara. Chutz mitzay. If he tells you to go out, it's going to be a bad reflection on you. Azoy vayitaf finished. But the most incredible pshat, and this the Reishis Chochma writes in Ois Tezayin, in Kavachayim by our Simon Sivkal Amzayin quotes it. Who's the balabas of the Welt? The Bar Yoilam. If Bar Yoilam tells you to go, like he officially told Acha Chutz mi Acher, even that the person balabas you don't listen to, because the Yid is never ugefrekt, and that's that Yom Balabais I say Chutz mitzay. So I was thinking that's a good way to end it. If a person knows, if he learns Hilchas Derech Eretz and lives Derech Eretz and sees his self chashivus, then he's never a tzei. He's never agefrekt. But the ikki is Derech Eretz Kadmol Torah. I got to talk to you all. Was?
Shame irgendwie you're too like to give a big character of Smith for today's year. After the show will be a seeker. Can I be a kasha or me rotzak bogle zakes es shall we give him to mid shnama al neu khofes man sitkoy yagdul ter viader.
Good. Yeah, I have, thank you. Sure.
Das war mich nicht das haben wir eins. Das will kommen sich heiden.
My boys are okay if anybody gets uncomfortable. I'm going to do the seeking.
That's Chazro. We learned a big sugya today. We learned Derech Eretz Kadmol Torah. Ein Derech Eretz Ein Torah is very real. Basically, even Moshe Rabbeinu with all his yichus, but Chas V'Shalom would be neveil Torah menu if he was lacking Derech Eretz. And we learned the Rabbi Kiva had a hands-on seudos to teach the Talmidim. We saw Tanoim, the Rashi says in Beya, because Lamaisa, Derech Eretz Kadmol Torah, 143 Mekoros in Chazal about Derech Eretz. Oichel B'shuk is the Hagdama because it's a lack of Kvoid Atzmai. Derech Eretz means I'm above them. I'm not the fresh mensch. I'm not a gold person. I'm a Ben Melech. You lose Kvoid Atzmai, you lose the ability to grow. But more Mida Toiva, B'shvili Nivra Oilam, if a person sees himself as a Sefer Torah, a Lebedik Sefer Torah, so then he's living, it's a past finish, der will das nicht. That's much easier to succeed. If you cut a big piece of bread, whatever, cake, more than a kibay is a problem, except on Shabbos. Not to focus on the meshubach foods, eat, we live, we don't live to eat, we eat to live, we eat what's healthy. Shabbos, both are okay. You're allowed to eat, bite into a big piece and cut a big piece. Drinking a cup that's more than a revius should be done in 2 gulps, 2 times, except a small cup or a kais of kiddush. The share of shtiyas revius is 2 times because of our halacha. When we're eating, it's a maila, I could say, it's a tainus haravid, it's a the heibenkai to leave a little piece of food over. That's like a tainus. Eating or drinking while standing should not be done. We can't say it's asa, but it's definitely a little bit lacking of derech eretz. Te'ima, drinking, but last muscle of makayis of a brach is okay. Biting into a big sandwich, pizza, pita, apple, we saw basically 2 mahalchim, 2 shitas. Certainly, hamachma tavel bracha, hameka yashami lismoich. The 2 heterim that we saw, what derech bekach is okay, and the shir of kebeya has changed in our times. Shabbos and Yomtov, it seems to be okay because it's not a rafsan, it's a oinik Shabbos. The halachos of kol nelam, we have to think when we do something, when we spit, when we leave dirty tissues. I forgot to mention, when people talk when they're eating, so they shower you with the food in the mouth. Another lack of derech eretz, pashut things people don't think. Treat a person like it's selam aleikim, like he's a ben melech, and we eat quietly, we eat properly. There shouldn't be bite marks in the food from our teeth. But even when we drink our kois, not to give it to others except for family. Kol mashma ba'al bayis asay chutz mitzay was an incredible insight of what our Torah is. But basically the message is we have to go to the extreme, not to hurt someone else's feelings, the Baal Abbas's feeling, the Baal Sabayis. And I should someone mentioned to me, taka of one own parent coming home with a chumrah that irritates parents is also chutz mi that kol mashma bayis asay. And basically when we see chashivas atzma and chashivas acherim, then we live a life of derech eretz.
When you drink something and I give it to you, you're drinking